The story begins with a man who has just been raised from the dead in an airplane laboratory. He wakes up with severed legs and arms, can't speak, and can't remember his past. However, inside the room is a scientist named Estelle. Estelle told him that this man's name was Henry. Then, Estelle activates a machine to attach robotic arms and legs to Henry's body. Estelle said that she was Henry's wife and proved it with a wedding ring. After that, she took him into another room to install a voice so that Henry could speak again. But while the process was going on, the electricity in the room suddenly went out and there was an attack. Apparently, the one who carried out this attack was Akan and his troops. He is a ruthless mobster who is the mastermind of Henry's resurrection. However, he has an evil goal and wants to rule the world. Meanwhile, Estelle only wants to help Henry come back to life, even if it means becoming a cyborg. Unfortunately, Estelle and the other scientists can't prevent it because Akan is too powerful. Before Akan took Henry, Estelle immediately outwitted him and led her husband to hide in the air duct. Then, they both enter a room full of corpses that are planned to be resurrected like Henry. Akan intends to create thousands of cyborgs as the world's deadliest killing machines. And so that this doesn't happen to her husband, Estelle invites him to escape using an emergency capsule. After diving into an electric Mars, they are intercepted by Akan's forces who are already there. Estelle tells Henry to beat them with full force. Unfortunately, he couldn't use his robotic hand weapon because he wasn't used to it. As a result, the mobsters were able to knock him off the bridge, and worse, they also could take Estelle as hostage. Not staying silent, Henry led them into a very dark place. Then, with the power at hand, he immediately brutalized at that moment. When Henry was struggling with Akan's men, suddenly someone came to his aid. After eliminating the mafia, he invited Henry to leave the place. In the car, this man introduced himself as Jimmy. He claimed to have been looking for him since 3 years ago. Not only that, he has also prepared a power bank to charge Henry's robot body, because if it runs out of energy, then his body will explode and die instantly. But when Henry's battery was not fully charged, they were ticketed by the police, and suddenly the police shot Jimmy, who tried to escape from there. Seeing Jimmy dead, Henry ran as far away as he could. He then went into the market to change his clothes so as not to be recognized by the police. Unfortunately, Henry's efforts ended in vain because they were still caught by them. So inevitably, he must immediately find a hiding place. Then Henry entered the bus to hide among normal humans, but there he meets a homeless man who claims to be Jimmy. Of course, Henry doesn't believe him at all, because that person has been killed by the police. But as it turns out, he is indeed Jimmy wearing tramp clothes. He then helps Henry to remove the tracking device inside his robot hand. Without wasting time, he gave a cell phone that was equipped with a special GPS. In essence, Jimmy told Henry to kill a cyborg named Slick and take the battery in his chest, because within 30 minutes his battery would run out soon. When they want to leave, a cyborg approached them and immediately set fire to the bus. Henry, who hasn't been able to use his powers, is no choice to run to a far place. Then, at the edge of the lake, he stole the clothes of the man there to trick the enemy, and according to the GPS on his cell phone, he then went to an old building in the city center. Long story short, Henry finally reached an elevator that would take him to Slick's apartment. Unfortunately, he had to deal with the guards. Luckily this time, he was able to brutalize properly, so he was able to bulldoze all the guards mercilessly. Not long after, he entered a server room, and there Slick seemed to be in sleep mode. But before splitting his chest, Henry saw a recording in the room featuring Estelle. As it turns out, the video was a trap. Unfortunately, Slick could escape with incredible running speed. Even so, Henry was able to catch him in the town square. And without a second thought, he beat him up on the spot. It don't know who shot Slick from afar, but Henry had to grab his battery before it was too late. Then, while avoiding sniper fire, he went to a bar according to Jimmy's directions. Not long after, Jimmy appeared with his appearance changed again. He then calls another Jimmy who uses the appearance of a waiter so that he can install his battery in Henry's body. It didn't take long. Henry's battery was finally installed properly. Jimmy then gave him 2 pistols as provisions to save Estelle. But when he wanted to get out of there, Henry heard gunshots from outside, which turned out to be the work of Akan's troops. So inevitably, he had to shoot again. Henry hadn't been able to use his robot powers to their full potential and was defeated by Akan. When Henry was down, Akan said that he had Estelle as hostage and would soon take her to the headquarters. Hearing that, Henry rushes to catch up with them. In the parking lot, Henry sees Jimmy's dead figure. But from a distance, another Jimmy appears again. And this time he uses the appearance of a motorcycle gang. He then tortured and interrogated one of Akan's men to find out the location of his headquarters. It wasn't long before 2 barkeeps were angry with Jimmy for making such a mess. What's more, the shootout had killed the women in the bar. But fortunately, Jimmy was able to calm them down with offering of money. He even could persuade one of the guards to help Henry. Without thinking, they immediately chased Akan and his troops while going crazy with a machine gun. After successfully getting into Akan's truck, finally, Henry can see his wife again. Here, he tries to calm Estelle down with sign language, as she can't speak yet. However, they are interrupted by Akan and his troops. Akan then knocked him unconscious and ordered his men to bury Henry. While dying, Henry's childhood memories came back, where at that time, he was a little boy who was often bullied by other children. But luckily, he had a fierce father who always defended him whenever and wherever. In addition, his father also often said harsh words so that Henry became a tough boy. Unfortunately, all these memories are meaningless because he will soon die for the second time. But when he started hopeless, he was helped by Jimmy. Jimmy then repairs Henry's broken machine so that it can be normal again. Because of Jimmy's help, Henry's condition recovered quickly. Then Jimmy invites him to go to his laboratory because he has important things to say. However, unfortunately, they were suddenly shot dead by a tank. Henry also rushed away from that place so as not to have the same fate as them. But while looking for a safe place, he was instead confronted by a military tank that chased him by shooting him continuously. After running far enough, he was finally able to jump onto the tank. Then with the weapons available, he immediately slaughtered everyone inside. Despite being overwhelmed, Henry still could defeat them without a single person left. Not long after, he got another call from Jimmy, who sent a location again. A short while later, he met Jimmy in the middle of the forest who was disguised as a plant. He then leads Henry to his laboratory, which is located in an old building. But when he got there, there was a gang of policemen who were raping a woman. Seeing that, Henry didn't let it be and immediately brutalized without mercy. Long story short, Jimmy took him into the laboratory, and there he played a very astonishing video, where Jimmy once worked for Akan, and he was the first person to create cyborgs from the corpses of gangsters, ex-cons, and other men with evil. Unfortunately, Jimmy couldn't erase the human feelings in the cyborgs, so they would be difficult to control like Henry. Because of this failure, Akan slammed him until he became disabled. The vengeful Jimmy eventually created many clones to avenge Akan's treatment of him. In essence, all the Jimmys Henry meets are clones. He says that Henry is the best cyborg he has ever made, and if look at his strength, he is the only cyborg who can defeat Akan. In addition, Jimmy has also upgraded technology in his avatar until it can become a completely normal human. And the great thing is, they also have different personalities and professions. But while Jimmy was showing off his avatars, the emergency alarm suddenly went off. For some reason, one of Jimmy's avatars handcuffed Henry and then wanted to kill him with electric voltage. Luckily, Henry was able to remove the handcuffs and immediately fought mechanics. As a result of their fight, a corpse fell from the top floor. Apparently, a human created by Jimmy who will later become the new avatar. Later, Jimmy explains that his computer has detected a danger signal from Henry's body, where both eyes are surveillance cameras, and if not destroyed, then Akan will continue to follow him. Hearing this, Henry offered another solution and persuaded Jimmy with sign language to work together against Akan. Having no other choice, Jimmy finally agreed to the plan. Without further ado, the two of them climbed to the roof of the building and immediately finished off the mobsters from a distance. Unfortunately, Akan's men continued to multiply until Jimmy finally mobilized his strongest avatar, the Colonel, to crush Akan's army. In this battle, the Colonel helped Henry with strategizing, as he was designed to be a warrior who has been in many battles. Because of his help, Henry was able to brutalize freely and unleash his true power. Even though he was surrounded, but Henry and the Colonel could get out, because Jimmy had set a big trap. They then escaped while carrying Jimmy and his wheelchair. On the way, the Colonel did some tricks to trip up the mafia. After that, the Colonel immediately drove Henry to Akan's headquarters to rescue Estelle. But it wasn't easy at all, because they had to deal with the cyborgs guarding the place. Although they managed to escape, Jimmy and the Colonel were both seriously injured. Then, before exhaling his last breath, the Colonel said that Henry's past memories would soon be restored, because Jimmy had removed his memory blocker when he was dying in the middle of the forest. The Colonel also gave him a military jacket as a memento and thanked him for his help to Jimmy. In addition, Jimmy also advised that Henry must be able to kill Akan and save his wife. Seeing the death of both of them, Henry immediately went berserk and finished off all the cyborgs who got in his way. Henry was very angry because he felt indebted to Jimmy who had brought him this far. Later, Henry entered Akan's room and there Akan appeared on the screen. Then he said that Estelle was only pretending to be his wife, because all the cyborgs created by Akan were deliberately brainwashed as Estelle's husband. That way, they will obey all the woman's wishes. After explaining, Akan forced Henry to duel with one of his cyborgs. In no time at all, Henry was able to brutally finish him off. He also could take the cyborg's battery and plug it into his own body. But unfortunately, he couldn't go anywhere anymore, because he was surrounded by Akan and all his robots. So inevitably, Henry was no choice to fight them all. This time, Henry was able to master his body perfectly, so that his attack power became greater. But for some reason, the robot humans are very difficult to finish off. Moreover, they can rise repeatedly like zombies. Seeing this, Henry led them into an armory and threw grenades into it. Unfortunately, it didn't work to kill them. And when they were cornered, Henry found a box containing adrenaline liquid. As a result, he immediately injected it into his body, so he could attack without feeling the slightest pain. Although he could slaughter all the cyborgs, he still lost against Akan, who always relied on cyborg control. Not long after, Estelle appeared in front of him. In the end, Henry saw a very shocking fact, where the woman was Akan's wife. Here, Akan also explains that everything Henry going through is a test, which basically means Akan wants to measure the maximum limit of his strength. That way, he can make another human robot that has specifications like Henry. But because his body is damaged, Akan intends to finish him off and make a new one. When Henry's life was on the line, he suddenly remembered his father's advice that Henry shouldn't be a coward. That made him get back up again and attack Akan hardcore. After taking Akan's life, Henry jumped into a helicopter while carrying Akan's head. Of course, Estelle looks very scared and tries to persuade Henry to forgive her. But unfortunately, it doesn't work anymore, because all his memories have recovered 100%, and the annoyed Estelle immediately pointed her gun, but Henry was able to shoot her first. With that action then, the movie ended.